Thanks for joining us on episode 1475 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
Hi, this is Bret Davis. I challenge you to invest in yourself, invest in others, develop your influence, and impact the world by using your time, your talent, and your treasures to live out your calling. Having the ability to recognize that it's okay that you are flawed, because we all are, is key. And one way to be inspired to do that is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast by my friend, Scott Mater. It's a mission and a goal of mine every day to find somebody that I can help become more confident, or put another way, be proud of who they are. So on my journey, every morning I ask myself, are you proud of who you are today? And then at the end of the day, are you proud of your action?
Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world. In today's podcast episode, I interview Bret Davis. I asked Bret about some of the unique things he's observed in his life and his career that led him to put out his book, Bretisms. I also asked Bret about which Bretism is his favorite, and Bret also shares how he's developed a method to adopt, modify, and implement the philosophies he's learned or observed from others. I've got a new book coming out called Inspired Living, Assembling the Puzzle of Your Call by Mastering Your Time, Your Talent, and Your Treasures. You can find out more about it and sign up for getting more information over at inspiredstewardship.com, Inspired Living. That's inspiredstewardship.com, Inspired Living. Bret Davis was born in Youngstown, Ohio, with stops throughout his life in Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Florida, back to Ohio, Georgia, and Texas. Bret Davis is a born leader, having grown up in the world of professional sports with a father who was an NFL coach and executive. Bret has had the opportunity to observe some of the top leaders and motivators throughout his childhood and into his young adulthood. Bret has been able to turn his learnings and observations into a powerful Amazon #1 best-selling self-help book for those looking to boost their confidence and reduce anxiety. With the love of his wife of 28 years, Kelly, and their two sons, Blake and Connor, he has achieved his dreams and more. Starting from a door-to-door salesman, he has worked his way up to executive-level positions with multiple companies in the medical field. Throughout his trials and experiences in the sales industry, Bret has come to understand people, and the way we all work holds a unique value. Today, he and his family reside in Houston, Texas. Welcome to the show, Bret.
Thanks, Scott.
So, Lily, I'm glad to have you here. So I shared a lot in the intro about some of the things that you've done and growing up the way you did, different things that you've had in your past. But I always think of intros as they're like Instagram photos, right? They show parts of our life, but they don't necessarily really show the whole journey. Would you share a little bit more about your journey and what brought you to the point of putting this book out, putting these ideas out into the world?
Yeah, absolutely, Scott. As we've talked about, I was lucky enough to grow up in a household with family members surrounded by confident people. And my father was an NFL coach and executive for a couple of decades. And throughout my journey, especially early on in life, I was always blessed with this ability to observe and observe different traits in others. And as you can imagine, when you're around people at the top level of their profession, which obviously the National Football League is, there's some alpha personalities and some really strong characters and really great leaders. And I'm not just talking about players and coaches. I'm talking about the people in the front office, their support staff, all those folks. And through my journey at a young age, I would see them and contrast them to maybe some other people in my life, whether it's folks that our family knew at church, neighbors, some of my friends' parents. And I noticed a bit of a contradiction of confidence and levels of anxiety, et cetera. And one of the things that I picked up at an early age, Scott, was the people that had that confidence and were able to control their emotional levels, their anxiety levels, nervousness levels. They relied on some key phrases or key philosophies that they not only said to themselves, but shared with others. And so early in my journey or childhood, I found it really interesting to look into different philosophies and how they could affect my outlook and the way I touched those around me. And really, the whole journey with this book started when my kids were born. I have two sons, Blake and Connor. And when they were growing up and were at a certain age, I would repeat some of these philosophies to them and try to instill them in a young age. And my wife, Kelly, started calling them Bretisms. And they started a board named Bretism. And then as they got older, I thought, I'm going to put a book together and I'm going to write a book for them. And I think like most authors, you always have 4 or 5 books going at once. And depending on what mood you're in or what thought strikes you for the day. And they'd always been there in the background being worked on. And then about a couple years ago, when my dad passed away, we were going through some of his things, and he was a writer as well. And we just found a ton of stuff that was 50 to 80% done. Mm-hmm. Nothing published, nothing completed. And it really struck me. And I thought, I'm gonna pick one of these books and lay focus to it. And I chose Bretisms to finish and publish because that was the one that was closest to my heart and the one that I felt could have the most impact on others, leading a more positive, fulfilled life and a happier journey. So that's what brought me to this point, and publishing a book and authoring a book was just sharing my life experiences and the people I've been around and how it has helped me in my, personal and professional success and growth.
So when you think about the book, for somebody that maybe hasn't picked it up yet, but is hearing this and thinking about it, is the book laid out? Tell the folks a little bit about what they can expect when they crack open a copy of the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm almost quoting verbatim from the book because it's really written conversationally. And I talk about in the book, this is your book, you can read it how you want it, but it was laid out with 30 chapters by design. So each chapter, Scott, is a Bretism or a philosophy. And how it's meant to be read is 1 chapter a day. So you read a chapter, you think on that, you marinate on that philosophy, how that would affect me, how that would impact myself, and how I treat the world and how the world treats me. And then the next day you go on to the next chapter. And what's really been interesting, Scott, is the book's been out for about 6-7 months now. #1 bestseller on Amazon and continues to stay on the bestseller charts. And some of the feedback that I've gotten is really interesting. Folks that have got past that first 30 days, if you will, they now use the book depending on what their need for that day is or that moment, because it tackles just all kind of different situations, mindsets, philosophies. And people now that if you're just picking up the book, you're going to read it day by day. But then once you get familiar with the book, there's going to be instances, and sometimes, Scott, I'll find myself, I may lean on 10 to 15 Bretisms in a given day. Depending as I go throughout my day, I just need those self reminders to keep myself focused on task and in the right frame of mind.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things I like to highlight on the show is the intersection between our personal journey and our faith journey. Would you share a little bit about your faith journey and how that has come and gone and changed the path that you've been on during your life?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I was raised in a Lutheran household, married. My wife was Irish Catholic, and we got married in traditional church. And as I was going through the motions of being a Christian, if you will, in the organized routine setting that I was raised in, one day, and I don't know why, but I just woke up and I thought, why do I believe the things that I do? Why am I accepting that Christ is my savior? And I thought, because I was told that's what I'm to believe. And I actually had a period of time where I just walked away from all faith and said, I'm going to start over and I'm going to look at the different options and the different religions and the different things out there, because when I choose a faith or a faith chooses me, right? If you're spoken to, it's going to be my decision, not because I was born into it. And I probably went 18 months, maybe 2 years, rudderless or faithless. Looking back on it, it certainly was a hollow time in my life. I didn't realize it at the time. But I kept seeking because I knew something was missing. And just through my own journey and my own different research, I came back to Jesus and Jesus Christ being my Lord and Savior. And of course, the hollowness went away. I became, fulfilled, and probably more than anything because it was my decision and I felt I was being called to. And how it led me to this stage in my life and the way I treat others, I think, is simply put, I'm much better at giving more of me away, right? What can I do today to show love to my brothers and sisters? What can I do today to give away knowledge, to give away a smile, a hug, be a shoulder to cry on, whoever I'm put in front of during that day's events? What can I do to be a Christian through my actions, not necessarily my words? And that is, I think, the biggest change in my faith journey when it became my decision and my faith versus my family's. And when I tell you I was raised by the greatest people in the world, I really did. Just solid family and an extended family. And I married into a wonderful family. But just having my personality, it had to be my decision. The biggest change in my faith journey is I now seek out what can I give away of myself to make somebody else's day brighter.
Mm. You think that's related in part to why you wanted to put the book that you have out into the world?
For 100%, for sure. Had I not gone on the faith journey, this book doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah. It's in a way, this book is part of your idea of putting things out into the world that can help people. It sounds are related to that. So I know this probably is going to be a mean question because I'm probably going to ask you which is your favorite child. But if you had to pick one, which Bretism is your favorite or the one that had the biggest impact on you?
It's funny because when I'm asked that, my answer is, it's asked me which one's my favorite child. And I can answer this in my son's Blake.
I can answer that. I can answer that. I only have one child. So it's easy. It's easy for me. He's my favorite.
Yeah.
But anyway, keep going.
My kids will laugh when they listen to this because my favorite Bret is like picking a favorite child because some days and some moments, one child's a little bit easier to be around than the other one, just like my wife and I. So it really, Scott, it depends on what I'm doing, what kind of mood that I'm in. I think a couple of them that I rely on heavily is hold yourself at least to the same level of accountability to which you hold others, right? And that has a lot to do with my faith as well. I think oftentimes we're so quick to not forgive or to get crossed with somebody else that doesn't do what we expected them to do. But in the same situation, we may not have done that. And when we fall short of helping others, we're really quick to forgive ourselves. Oh, I was busy. The phone rang. Oh, I meant to call Scott and wish him a happy birthday. Or I really would have liked to bring them soup when they were sick, but my favorite show was on, right? So we're very easy to forgive ourselves. But I talk about this in the book, and when you flip that script, right now, Scott forgot to call Bret and wish me a happy birthday. Hey, Scott's my buddy. I can't believe he did that. Or I wasn't feeling well and somebody didn't offer to bring me soup. That's not forgivable. That's one that I rely on a lot during the day. Another one of my favorites that I try to live by is every positive has a negative, and the reverse is also true. And I lean really heavy on that, Scott. And really every situation I'm in, I find a way to see the positive in it. I find the way to look and see the light in it. And I really put it simply to a lot of folks who struggle with this concept. And I put it this way: when you're looking at a rose bush, focus on the flower, not the thorn. So those are just a couple that I use in just my day-to-day life. But again, there's 30 of them in the book and can certainly go through plenty more. But I'll tell you one that I used today, and that's eagle that chases two rabbits catches none. So that's my to-do list, I call them rabbits, right? And a lot of times when I've got 400 things going and different things to do, I lean on that Bretism. So I don't get overwhelmed with stress and feel like I'm never going to accomplish all my tasks, which then leads to higher anxiety, nervousness, etc., and which is what I'm always trying to manage and keep at a minimum.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned in the description of the book that it's Bretisms and then adopted, borrowed, and modified philosophies for a life with less anxiety and more confidence. Why do you focus on the anxiety and confidence part in the subtitle? What's the connection there?
The connection there is just, again, back to my observation, and more as I got older, there just with the stresses of the world and social media and all the things that this younger generation faced and I was a youth leader and a youth coach for many years. And I would just see these young adults and even older adults as I entered the workforce just be overwhelmed with anxiety. And there was just a lot of added anxiety in people. And just people weren't confident. And I really think one affects the other. I think you can have high confidence and high anxiety, but you recognize the anxiety for what it is. And you've learned coping mechanisms. I've certainly have many moments of high levels of anxiety. I've struggled with anxiety through my life. And I'm also, people see me as ultra confident. So it's not that confident people don't feel anxiety. They just understand it for what it is and learn how to manage it. And I share a lot of tools in the book on how to deal with that anxiety. And that's why I think the two of them are intertwined, because the better you can manage your anxiety, the more apt you are to feel a self-confidence to take you to the next level.
And the other part of the subtitle, you mentioned borrowed and modified philosophies. Talk a little bit about why you put that in. That are all of these things that you just came up with independently, they came down on a tablet, or how did you borrow and adopt some of these ideas?
Yeah, so some of them are 0% mine, some are 100% mine, and some are 50% mine, right? So if I hear something or I read of a philosophy, or I hear somebody say a philosophy, and I really marinate it. I'm often asked, how do you hear something then adapt it to be your own? Sometimes I'll hear something, and after marinating on it for a day or two, I think to myself, this doesn't apply to me, or I don't really have use for this one, so I'll throw it out. Or sometimes I'll say, you know what? I like this. There's something here that can help me as a daily reminder to be a better person. But how it's phrased isn't quite mine. And so then I'll just workshop it in my head. And when I get it to a point that it fits me the best, then I do it that way. And that's the goal of the book Bretisms as well. I want people to take this and feel free to tweak them, change them, add, subtract, because the goal of the book is not to give Bret Davis credit for the Bretism. The goal of the book is for the reader to make them theirs so it has the biggest impact on them.
Mm-hmm. And do you think you talked about a lot of these coming from in your youth? You had that gift of observation, but observation means looking at things or seeing things. And here you're also talking about adapting them and tweaking them to your own. How did you go from just observing to, oh, wait a minute, I need to massage this to make it something that I can really accept and believe and internalize?
I think a lot of it is just maturity and growth. And as you get older and you face tougher situations in the real life, if you will, when you're young, and there's actually in a chapter in the book about live life as if you're at the grown-ups table. And I talk extensively in the book about what it's like to be a kid and how carefree we are, and everybody's perfect and everybody's personality is awesome. And there's not that much stress and conflict. And then as you get older, I needed for my personal journey something more, right? And I knew I loved the philosophies, and I knew that I could learn so much from other people that I just needed to make them my own. Because if they didn't fit what I needed, then I had to change them to where they fit what I was looking for, my personality and my personal growth.
Did you go through that part of the journey parallel with, or was that before or after you did some of the faith questioning that you were talking about?
I would say I did a little bit of it before my faith journey. Almost I was dog paddling, right, with it, if you will. And then after my faith journey and my commitment to Christ and my personal growth, everything became clearer, right? And I went from dog paddling to swimming, right? And understood how to hone it. Because again, and when I talk about my faith to people, I always talk about this hollowness that was inside me. And then it's really funny when you talk to folks, and you and I have talked a little bit about this kind of off the air with your personal faith journey. It really is, people can tell you all it is, but until you've lived it and you realize what it's like to have that personal relationship with something bigger and greater than you, it does have a profound impact in all aspects of your life.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think part of too, it sounds like there was a little bit of that questioning that you were doing in the faith component of, wait, why do I believe what I believe? And what you're describing is looking at these philosophies and going, wait, is that really something? Is that really something I want to accept into my life and make part of my life or not? It sounds in a way, those are very similar concepts applied out in different ways in your life too.
And it's funny, Scott, is post-faith journey, if you will, a lot of the philosophies that I rely on are much more external focused now, right? So before my faith journey was more about me and I, and how can I be better, and how do I get more accolades? How do I get the attention? And post faith journey, it's so funny how that lens gets turned around. Mm-hmm. And it's more like, what can I rely on in my personal growth to be a better person to those around me, and maybe pick somebody else's life up or help them speed along a little bit faster on their journey. And that's been one of the most rewarding things, Scott, is some of the feedback I've gotten from readers just even already. And again, the book's only been out six, 7 months, is people that have said, hey, you said something in here that's really changed the way I look at life. And now, whether it's career oriented, faith oriented, or just family dynamic oriented, how it's impacted them. And man, it's neat to do something for yourself, but boy, it is off the charts cool when you're able to do something that helps somebody else that you'll probably never meet and certainly will never be able to repay you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I always talk about ripples sometimes, that we all put out ripples that affect others. The thing is, sometimes are we even aware of them? And most of the time we're not. That door you held open, or that smile you gave to somebody, may have completely changed 4 people down the road, may have changed somebody's life, because hey, that person was in a better mood, so they let the person in traffic, which then created no traffic accident that morning or whatever. You have no clue how the little things you do ripple out and affect the world.
I love that.
I
just wrote down ripples. I love that.
That was I was a school teacher for 16 years, and you get very familiar as a school teacher with the idea of you don't get to hear about the impact you had on students 90% of the time. Every once in a while, someone comes back and says something to you, but I've kept up with some of my kiddos that went through my science classes and things. And some of them now are doctors and cancer researchers and parents and all of the other ways that their lives are positive. And it's, yeah, I had a little bit to do with that. I won't claim all the credit by any stretch of the imagination the way I did. I still had a little bit of credit in that. So that's always fun to think about. So I've got a few questions that I like to ask all of my guests, but before I go there, is there anything else about the book or this journey that you've been on that you'd like to share with the listener?
Yeah. So when we talk about the book and the journey of the book, I'll share with you something that happened to me that I never saw coming. And when I published the book and we were waiting for it to come out, my wife was in her office and she's yelling my name. And I said, what is it? And she was really excited. She said, your book's out. I can get it on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all these other places. And I really thought that my initial reaction would be one of excitement and pride. And here's the really funny part. I had a level of anxiety wash over me, right? And it's funny that the book's about reducing anxiety. And the day that it is, the second I heard it was available for the public, I felt a huge wave of anxiety. And like I do, I sat and I thought about it. And I said, okay, what is it? Why am I feeling this way? And I realized that I'm really sharing an intimate part of myself and my thoughts and my innermost feelings to the world. And how's it going to be received? And is it going to help somebody? Is it going to have the intention that it was written with? And it didn't last for long. Then the excitement and sense of accomplishment and all those things came along with it. But that's the one thing that I never saw coming. When I wrote this and published it, I always thought it would be, my intention was if I can help 4 or 5 people, then it was mission accomplished, right? It was not written to be a bestseller. All those are happy surprises. But when I felt exposed, like that was something unique that I think most people that I have shared that with, and I haven't shared it with a ton, but they're like, wow, I'd have never thought that would be your first feeling. So I just feel that's worth sharing to folks, Absolutely. To some of your listeners.
And having written a book myself and talked to a lot of authors on the podcast over the years, I think, people don't really, until you've put a book out, you don't really understand how any book, even a fiction book, there's a piece of you in it. Even if you're putting a book out in the world that has nothing to do with you or your life, but some sort of whatever, it doesn't matter. There's still a piece of you in it, because it is, bringing a book into existence is not something that is ever easy to do. There's an intimacy involved in it, because it's your ideas, it's your thoughts, it's your feelings, it's your stuff down on paper, for good or ill, right? That's why in the middle of mine, it starts going blah, 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 for no apparent reason. About 7 pages. Not really. Yeah, though that probably would work fairly well if I did that, but that's a whole other conversation. People will be like, oh, that's where Scott shows up. Okay, got it. So one of the things I do, I run, my brand is Inspired Stewardship, and I run things through that lens of the word stewardship. And yet that's one of those words that I've discovered over the years means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I like to ask my guests, when you hear the word stewardship, what does that word mean to you?
It means taking people beyond where they thought they could go. Right. So stewardship to me is a lot like leadership, right? Is you're leading them, you're being a steward and taking them, whether it's on a personal journey, a faith journey, and taking them further along faster than they thought they could go. And I'm often asked as a leader and a person that stewards young adults and adults, I guess now more that my kids are older. To tie it back to Bretisms, I'm often asked, what's a Bretism that you use as a steward, right? Or in your stewardship of others? And I think there's probably 6 or 7 that I lean on, but the one that I lean on the most would be to take blame and shed credit, right? And I think oftentimes we all get caught up in wanting the credit when something goes well, and when something doesn't go well, we want to look to assign blame. And whether you're talking in a professional setting, a faith journey setting, or just a personal growth setting, I think it's important that people know that you're willing to shed credit, you're willing to recognize others, especially when it's a team effort. I've had many successes in my life, Scott, and I know you have as well, but none are my own, right? Whether it's the folks that stewarded me, that got me to this point, you obviously as a school teacher, your podcast, you're constantly stewarding people. And that's a real important one that kind of helps somebody grow. And the other one I lean on, the other Bretisms I lean on as well, as I'm stewarding people to emotionally move on or get to a better mental health or emotional part in their life, is you can't trip over what's behind you. Mm. Right. And to tie this back to my personal faith and my faith journey, I think that's one of the things that a lot of people struggle on is, okay, the mistakes that I've made in the past, right? Can I have a relationship with Christ because I've sinned so much? That's pretty easy answer. All you got to do is pick up any of the Gospels and they cover that pretty quick. But to me, it's more about realizing you can't trip over what's behind you, meaning self-forgiveness. You need to forgive yourself and you need to move on before you can grow. And really, those are the two, as somebody that stewards others, that I really rely on as I try to help them in their personal growth. And if they want to grow to A to B, then I always feel if their goal is to grow to A to B as a steward, I need to get them to D or E. I need to get them further. And otherwise, that I really have an impact in my stewardship of them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So this is my favorite question that I like to ask everybody. Imagine for a minute that I invented this magic machine. Mm-hmm. And with this machine, I was able to pluck you from where you are today and transport you into the future, maybe 150, maybe 250 years. But through the power of this machine, you were able to look back and see your entire life, see all of the connections, all of the ripples, all of the impacts you've left behind. What impact do you hope you've left in the world?
I hope I've increased confidence in others. It's a mission and a goal of mine every day to find somebody that I can help become more confident, or put another way, be proud of who they are. Right. So on my journey, every morning I ask myself, are you proud of who you are today? And then at the end of the day, are you proud of your actions? The answer is not always yes. I'm flawed and probably more flawed than most. But when I look back, or the world, or you are in your time machine and I look back, if I can see that I had a positive impact on others' growth and loving and accepting themselves, being proud of who they are, and the confidence and love they share into the world, then I'll say mission accomplished.
So what's on the roadmap? What's coming next as you continue on this journey?
To continue to share my story, my faith journey, looking forward to inspiring others. As I said earlier on, I've always have 2 or 3 different books in the works. So I think once I get through the Bretisms after 2 or 3 years and things die down a little bit, I'll start focusing on that and continuing. My wife and I have recently become empty nesters, continuing the 30 plus years with Kelly and continuing to enjoy her company and go visit our kids and hopefully grandkids someday. But that's what's on the horizon for us.
Awesome. So you can find out more about Bret Davis over at Bretisms.com. Of course, I'll have a link to that in the show notes as well. Bret, anything else you'd like to share with the listener?
I first just like to thank you, Scott, as a fan of your podcast. It's obviously, I'm flattered to be on as a guest. And the thing that I would like to share with the listeners is ask them to give the book Bretisms a shot. Or if you know somebody that struggles with anxiety or needs a little boost of confidence or looking to accelerate on their personal relationship with Christ, to give the book a shot. And if I can help of any way, or you have any questions about the book or any of the Bretisms in it, feel free to reach out to me via the website that Scott just shared.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you again, Scott.